Welcome back to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I'm Rebecca Tuttle of Grant Right Now, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Cynthia Rojas of 2-Year Growth and Peta Blakely of Blakely Consulting. Last week's Coffee Time conversation focused on disruption in organization data and evaluation planning. We're seeing and experiencing disruption from so many angles, particularly in recent weeks. I'm going to invite my co-host back into the live stream so they can talk with us about some of that disruption we're all experiencing. Welcome, Cynthia. Welcome, Peta. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. You know, organizations have had to make many sacrifices to keep their services going, prepare for the unknowns, just even post-pandemic, as well as the unknowns of opening our doors from social distancing. A lot has occurred these past few weeks, and there's no words for the pain, the grief that we're all feeling as the unknowns that we're experiencing continue to escalate. Cynthia, Peta, and I, we founded Coffee Time with Masterminds to help nonprofits and organizations prepare for the post-COVID future, to respond to these unknowns and these evolving demands that are placed upon us each and every day, so that we can deliver this uninterrupted and much needed services, the supplies, as well as the opportunities to our communities, many of whom rely heavily upon the services for their very survival. We want to do our part by offering what we could to help nonprofit organizations get ahead, really be able to figure out what it is that they need to do to be able to respond and offer aid to their communities. I'm joined by my co-hosts Cynthia Rojas and Peta Blakely. Cynthia, we all sit here today with heavy heart for the families of the individuals who have passed away, and for the unjust death for the millions of people who can feel the pain of those families, because we ourselves know these dangers. Cynthia, can you share a little bit more about that pain with us? What are you feeling?
This has been, Rebecca, a terrible week and or 9-10 days. And I, like you said, I too sit with a heavy heart. And we've had individuals die in unjust death. And my heart goes out to those families, but also the millions of people who know the danger, who are well aware that being Black and brown puts you in a danger just because you're Black or brown. And also I think about the leaders of our nonprofit sector, who in the middle of what has been one of the greatest crisis or disruptions that we've had as a nation and as a world, as a universe, are now dealing with yet another crisis in our nation. And these are really hard times and uncharted waters. We don't have the answers. So this has been a really hard week, Rebecca.
Absolutely. And you know, there are no answers. And I think when we're all experiencing something that's unfamiliar and pain, and we just look for those answers, it makes it harder and harder to really cope with. Peta, how are you doing today?
This is a tough week. I am angry and sad, and in some ways optimistic. I think this is the hardest show we've ever done, and I'm glad to be here and thinking about these things with you.
Absolutely. This is the hardest show we've done. In fact, we had a completely different idea of what we were going to do this week, didn't we?
We did.
And it's funny, I don't even remember that idea anymore.
It's a good one, and we're going to come back to it. But this week we all felt like we needed to stop and acknowledge this moment in history and comment on what we think is most important right now, particularly for the leaders of not-for-profits, who I think are themselves in crisis right now.
Hmm. Cynthia, nonprofits, they're facing some very unsettling times. Staff's being eliminated, it's been eliminated, right, with the unemployment rate soaring. Changes are being made to the organization's infrastructure, and leadership is also shifting. And it's going to continue to shift and in ways that are unknown. So it's going to leave a lot of organizations who are already feeling this now, but it's going to leave them feeling left with, what should we do? What do you say to nonprofits and organizations who are facing these disruptions?
Yeah, this is, it feels unfair for me to say what I'm about to say because I'm sensitive to the fact that leaders have been leading for 12 weeks in uncharted waters. They are tired. I'm on calls all day with leaders, and they talk about having to show up all the time. And this time you're in front of a camera and you have all these lights, and it's also a different kind of showing up. They don't get to shut their doors and take a moment. And what we're asking of leaders continues to be exhausting. And it's hard for me to say what I'm about to say, but it is what we signed up for. And that is to show up for our staff who are hurting and who may be affected by this, and to show up for the people that we serve. And showing up means that you call on your staff and you ask them how they're doing, that you have conversations, difficult conversations with your team. That, yesterday when we were talking about, when the three of us were talking yesterday, I had mentioned being able to bring the staff together when we get back to the office and having a difficult conversation. And one of you reminded me, it may be a while before we go back to the office. We need to have the conversation now. And as a leader, I've spent many, many years of my professional life as a leader. Showing up is so important. That's what's expected of us. And that's my advice for leaders today.
You said that what you're about to say is really hard, but we have to say more of the things that are really hard to say. We have to have these conversations because how many people here, and looking later, want to say things that are hard to say, but they don't know how. So that's part of it. Peter, we were talking in our conversation all week, the three of us, about mission.
Right.
Right. That role of that mission. Tell us more.
Yeah, and Christine raised such an interesting point last week when we talked to her about, doing the work in the context of the community and how your staff are themselves affected by all the pain in the community. And I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind. The role of not-for-profits is filling gaps, not, addressing human needs, not addressed by other sources, by societal structures, by economic factors. And the need is so great right now that I think organizations really, really need to be focusing on the best way to execute their mission in this particular moment in history. And it is going to be so hard. Once again, as Cynthia's pointed out, they are not immune from the effects of living through this moment in history. And so it is going to be triply hard, but the need is just going to explode. Some of what's contributing to the social unrest that's going on right now is the massive inequality in society. And at least in the short term, I think that that's going to increase. And so for those organizations that are providing things like food and housing and healthcare, the need is going to be greater than ever.
I want to acknowledge a comment in the comment box, in the chat box, from Donna Koza. She writes, difficult conversations. Yes. It is okay to talk about it. And you're right, Donna. It is okay. Sometimes leaders don't know how to have that conversation. And what's important in that situation is to say, I don't know how to have this conversation, but I want to have it because it's important. And that humility and vulnerability really taps into the human aspect of leadership. And your followers, your employees, your staff, the people you serve could really will really understand what that's like, because we've all been there. So thank you, Donna. Thank you very much.
I know Donna very well. Thank you, Donna. We have a comment from May. May says, it's very appropriate to stay and acknowledge that as leaders, we still have to show up. I show up every day, even though I'm exhausted. Thank you, May.
Yeah.
I know that not showing up to my calls is not the answer. I'll continue to lead my crisis teams by training and helping them practice self-care during these trying times and during these challenging times. We spoke about self-care. I mean, May, these are all important things. And she says, as a woman of color, I know that I cannot be silent and I must continue to show up for my teams. And May, we're going to show up right there with you, with all of you, because this is how we're trying to grow our community, is to let you know that we're here for you. And, the struggles that you're going through as nonprofits and organizations. And so if there's a topic you want us to cover, if you want to come join us on our show, you're part of our community. We're all in this together. And, I was speaking with a lot of funders this week, looking for their advice, guidance, and leadership. What are the answers? What is it that we should do? Because the landscape of funding is also going to change, and nonprofits can't open their doors if there's no support, if there's no resources for them to do so. So we need to be reaching out to people now. We need to be showing up like May and Donna and Renee, who's here with us again, and everyone who's part of our Coffee Time community and other communities. And, reach out to people and let them know that, we need your support, that we can't do this without you. And here's some of the things that we're working on. And here's where we're going with this. And it is uncertain and it is exhausting and it is hard. But we need to stick together to get it done so that we can be here for people. Ida, this is one of our heaviest shows. This is a heavy show. And, what else? What else is on your mind?
Well, I think it's important. So I watched the piece that was done by the Obama Foundation, where President Obama spoke along with some amazing individuals who are on the front lines of changing how we work together as a society as it pertains to police brutality. And I have to tell you that one of the most powerful questions that was asked in that show was, is this moment a game changer? And I think it is. It's a missed opportunity if we don't stop and say, we got to do this differently. And they talked about, we use the words adaptation and innovation. They didn't use those words at all. They used transformation. Every single person used that word. And I thought, wow, imagine if we come out of this completely different. And they dared us to imagine a world that was very, very different than the one we live in today. And I walked away from that show feeling so empowered. We are going to be okay, but we have to dare. We have to dare to have conversations. We have to dare to imagine, and we have to dare to transform. So I see hope. Go ahead, Peter.
And you see a role in obviously there are some nonprofits that are 100% committed to leading that transformation. But what do you see as the role of other nonprofits who might be arts organizations or housing organizations in contributing to this transformation?
Yeah, so the arts is so powerful, so powerful. It's so painful that they have not been a part of this time with us, because many of the ways we enjoy the arts is live, but there are some that are making it through.
And we can't understate the role of artists in advancing this movement.
God,
right.
and
That visual expression.
Yeah.
That visual expression. You know, it's
Mhm.
interesting because a lot of the COVID-19 pandemic funding has been about basic human needs, the food, the shelter, the clothing, right? What is absolutely necessary right now. But what's happening is the arts organizations who allow for that creativity, that freedom of expression, that voice, they are seeing, you know, opportunities paused right now for funding, or they don't know how to articulate their services or their offerings to their community in a way that aligns with the priorities of these emergency funds right now. And those arts and the social services and the human services, the case management and all of that, that is so important to help lift up and support people's social spheres, right? The social element, that human element, that a lot of the conversations that I've had with funders is that they realize that as well. And so I think this month, they've told me, some of them, this month they're going to start opening up some of those priorities to allow for some more of those other organizations, because they see how vital and important they are. And I don't know what's going to happen, if it's going to happen the same way that they had said last week, but I know that they are, even though they don't have the answers for us, reflecting on it, considering it, and trying to do their best to really open the resources so everyone can get that critical support that we need to help other people.
Yeah, for me, the arts have always. Oh, do I hear an echo? No. For me, the arts have always mirrored our society, and they provoke us. And I love watching live theater. I'm also a storyteller. There's a lot of power in sharing your personal narrative. There's power in music. I understand that there is a protest today happening around music. They're embedding music into the protest. There's a lot of, and that's within the state of Connecticut, because I understand that we have viewers from different states. But the arts play a really vital role, and I feel their absence. Can you imagine what theater would be like right now if we can go, or if people just go on the stage and talk about what this means to them? If we could stand up and talk about what do we imagine our world to be like in the future, that would be a powerful thing, and we're missing that. So I encourage conversations, even if you are even if you're not a leader, but if you could take the lead in having conversations, that's powerful.
Absolutely. You know, and there are I'm tripping on my words, not because I don't know what to say, because I don't know how to say this, but you talked about innovation before being sort of the buzzwords, and now it's transformation. We can transform some of the ways that we receive art, meaning maybe it's not in a closed theater in seating. Maybe it's out in the open, people share their art, Is that innovative? Maybe, but I think it's more transformational, because when you're outside and you're gathering, look at the protesting. People are gathering as communities and expressing themselves, and they're finding new and creative ways of doing that. And so I think we can still preserve the arts. We just have to do it differently. And maybe we do that as a segment on our show. Bring some of the art alive on our show, And to our viewers and our audience who also have platforms and shows, put some of the things that are getting lost, that are really helpful and comforting for people, out on your channels, out in your community, out in your space.
But I think we're highlighting even more of the ways that mission-based organizations need to show up and need to meet needs as we're talking.
Right.
The arts is just one
Peace.
right, one thing that's missing that people aren't getting from the usual channels. Yeah.
Yeah. There is also, there was another comment made in that show with the Obama Foundation. Someone said, we don't have saviors, we build teams, right? So what we're talking right now is we're starting to feel the need or the absence of other elements of our lives. And there's this, we don't have a person who's going to lead us through this change. We only have each other, and we're only going to do it together. And I know that statement may be overused, but for me, it remains powerful. We're only going to do this together. We're in it together, and we have to solve it. And it's, Rebecca, what you said, the purpose of our show was really to have a conversation, because everything is the unknown. We named this show Responding to the Unknowns, never imagining 12 weeks ago or
how much of the unknown we would encounter.
Yeah, we started 8 weeks ago about one topic, post-COVID future.
Yep.
Here we are 8 weeks later talking about another crisis and leading through another crisis. And what happens if your nonprofit has been looted and you have to rebuild internal infrastructure, or your staff are in the middle of this and they need you to reach out to them. Like, we couldn't have planned this. We couldn't have planned the trauma that people are going through in experience, or even just seeing what's happening, because watching it also causes vicarious trauma.
But if we unify and we do this together, we pay real close attention to the ways people are hurting, to the fears they have, to those traumas they're going through, then we can modify our response, meaning we can deliver more of what they need from us as nonprofits and organizations, because we too are feeling what they're feeling, yes, but we need to be paying closer attention to what those needs are so we can respond appropriately, going forward. But also when newer unknowns, different unknowns pop up, this is a time. I mean, last week we talked about, what if your data and evaluation changes? How do you capture data that's necessary to show your organization's impact and what you're doing and who you're serving? Now's the time to take that and really get out there and ask people, what do you need? What do you genuinely need? How can we genuinely help you? And provide that.
Or, very nimble data collection. The ways that we have always documented need in our communities are going to be out of date, right? They are already out of date. And so one of the things that we need to be thinking about as community serving and mission-based organizations is, how do we collect data in real time about community need?
And data that matters.
Yeah.
We have a comment here. Do you want to touch upon this comment?
Oh, yeah. He says, I'm glad you're doing this series. I appreciate that you're taking on the difficult topic of systemic racism, sending support to all those fighting for justice. Thank you, Kate. We appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Kate just sparked something in me. And so this is another responsibility that we have. The protests that you are seeing and the rioting and all this that you're seeing across the nation is the culmination of people who are tired, deeply, deeply tired of being oppressed. Yep. And as nonprofit organizations, we need to be sensitive to that. And we need to make sure we're not building infrastructure that adds to that oppression or adds to the systemic racism. And that takes awareness, and that takes conversation with staff. And this is where your frontline staff are so important, because they are the ones who are touching.
And this is another way that the organization itself is influenced by all of those factors. The organizations that are closest to the issues are themselves vulnerable to systemic racism, right? So, we know that Black-led organizations raise less money than white-led organizations. We know that white women in particular are overrepresented in not-for-profits. The issues that are outside are also inside.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rebecca, we have another comment.
Yes, you want to read it, Cynthia?
Yeah. So the most challenging thing I face today, as I serve and support 151 schools, from the haves to the have-nots, from the Rockaways to Jamaica to Ozone Park to Forest Hills. May lives in New York, for those who are not familiar with the neighborhoods, but where the faces look different, which make the beginning of my conversations so different, and more importantly, the end results are different, making my position in helping and supporting so frustrating, but I continue to serve and support New York City. Thank you for having this conversation, is what part of my daily self-care. Oh, we're so thankful that we're part of your self-care.
Yeah.
Did we lose Peter?
She'll come back, I'm sure.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, May, for that. I really, really do appreciate that. There was something that I wanted to respond to what Peter was saying, but I've lost my train of thought. But yeah, as nonprofits, we want to be careful, and we want to use this time to really reflect on our processes, and make sure that they're not adding to the oppression that people are feeling, to the racism that people are feeling. I had a doctor's visit yesterday, and I promise you, in all of my life, I have never had a doctor ask me, "How is your family doing?" She spent the first minute asking me how I was doing and how everyone in my family is doing. And I so appreciated that. I'm so used to doctors coming into the office and typing on the chart automatically. Like, that's the first thing they do, is they read your chart. And this doctor was so kind. Like, she really engaged me in conversation about how I was feeling. And this is what we need to do. Change the conversation. It doesn't have to be work from the first minute. Consider that we're all human beings, and we're all going through something that's very, very challenging. Whether you're personally affected or not, these are challenging times for everybody.
I appreciate what you said earlier about nonprofits and people who are being oppressed. I mean, that is why we have nonprofits, to help the most vulnerable, to help people who are oppressed and in really painful and underserved circumstance. So all the more important for us to help support and sustain these nonprofits that provide those vital services and that that important care that families and communities need. And nonprofits don't just provide direct service, they provide advocacy, they encourage and deploy policy change. They too host community conversations. So I encourage you, if you not met a nonprofit or involved yourself in their work, really reflect on your vision, your visual that you have in your mind as we go through this, and see what stands out for you, and who can I reach out to that's doing that work, that's having those conversations, and start talking to them, start reaching out. They need you, and you'll also get something in return, because you'll be part of the conversation and you'll probably receive some healing yourself.
I mean, I think that, that so many different not-for-profits have stepped up in so many ways to meet needs and contribute. even in the, in the context of COVID, and they've really expanded, and they're going to continue stepping up. And that is getting involved in those organizations is a great way that people can be contributing right now. I think a lot of people want to be involved and they want to be a voice for change, and everybody has different ways that they can and want to contribute. And that's a really great way to be involved.
Absolutely. Now, Peter, we have a comment from Renee, and unfortunately, it's going to cover you again, but I'll give you a warning this time before. Okay. Okay. So Renee says, thank you for the conversation, and recognizing as a nonprofit, it's important for us to use, or it's important for, she must say, us to know that a lot of times we are on the front line fighting to provide for the Black and Brown community. And our presentation to the community is very important in order to maintain positivity within our organization. So self-care and conversation need to be ongoing.
So true. Yeah, so true.
Thank you, Renee.
They're really absorbing so much of the burden and stress right now. And this is, an issue that I feel really deeply is a lot of not-for-profit organizations have taken the stance that we're doing such important work that we have to pour all of our resources and all of our funding into the work. And that's not the fault of the organizations on their own. Funders have also contributed to that dynamic. But what you end up with is the people closest to the work not being the best resourced. And
wait, can we clarify? Because I couldn't hear you completely, but I know what you said, but I want you to repeat that.
Sure.
Because it could have sounded like you said not being the best resource, but what you said was resource.
Resource. Thank you. And what I mean by that is, in a perfect world, the quality of your healthcare and the amount of vacation time that you have should be proportionate to how close you are to the work, right? It's nice that tech workers have personal training and massage, but frankly, the social workers need it more, right? Who should really have 8 weeks a year of vacation and free daily mental health visits, right? It should be the people who are doing that work. And that's not how it's been. And that I believe that's just another way that we continue to, compound these inequalities. But I look at an organization like Renee's, it's a small organization, it's people who are very close to the work. And you say, we really want that to be a big, strong, solid organization because it's so vitally important.
Yeah.
And those are the organizations that are having those really important, intimate conversations that we need to be having. And I really believe, I was on the phone begging some funders, just please invest in these smaller organizations. They just need one of you to take a chance on them. They're serving hundreds of people. It's not that they're small and can't serve large groups of people. It's that they're small, maybe just starting out, or don't necessarily have a history of hundreds of thousands of dollars behind them. But their work is so vital. It's so important. We need to make more of an investment in these small, mighty groups, these small, mighty organizations and nonprofits than we have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, as we're nationally having a conversation about inequality and about systemic racism, now is the time for us to talk about how that is playing out in every sector, including the not-for-profit sector.
Cynthia, our show is going over, and we could continue this dialogue, and I think we have a responsibility to reframe our show's agenda going forward and continue this. But before I, kind of close out, I'll ask everyone who's with us in our community and in yours, if there is something that we can talk about on our show, if there's a conversation you want to have, reach out to us and let us know. All of this that we're having in the chat, this dialogue, this is so important. And not only are you sharing that with us in this live, this is out there now. These conversations are going. So, Cynthia, we have to wrap up just for, time intention. People are hurting and they're scared. And there's so many people who still have yet to make their voices heard. What do you say to our audience who are watching as we close out and enter into reflection?
Well, I think it's important as we end the show to have a moment of silence, because now we're gonna go back to our workday, and it's important to reflect and to admit that this is heavy, and to pause, because people have died and we can't let their death be unnoticed or just die in vain, have been in vain. So can we take a moment, Rebecca, and have a moment of silence?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.